All right. Greetings, everybody. Greetings. We are going live. This is Reverend Camila from The Gathering, and I have Dr. Irie Session,
Hello, hello, hello.
and I have our intern Kanisha with us, and we have the one and only Minister of Worship and Arts, DeShay Jackson, with us on tonight. Okay, I got to make sure I got us up all live. I want to welcome everybody in, let y'all know this is our Talk Back to the Text Part 2. If you're not familiar, we like to keep the conversation going. On Saturday, we watched together as a community DeShay's debut on the Emmy Award winning show We're Here, where they were phenomenal. But some of that experience was filmed at The Gathering, and so The Gathering was so glad to watch with them. But we also want to have a conversation with DeShay about their experience. And we're here and just in a little bit more. So I want to say now, because DeShay's going to get into some talking, but if you have questions at any time, drop them in the chat and we will be reading them in so we can have this wonderful conversation with DeShay. DeShay.
Well then, first of all, I really am taking more breaths because it still feels it's a surreal thing, but also like when you're from a small town in Northeast Missouri, where 63 people in your class and like 3 of those people are black and you're related to the 2 other folks, um, you know, the closeness and the smallness of life, you just don't think that it's going to hit you in this way, and it kind of has, and I'm like, oh. And just breathing into it. But I'm thankful for the spaces where I continue to be celebrated before any type of recording or anything else. And so I'm thankful for this opportunity because also this is a privilege that I can name within the intersections of my blackness, black queerness, and transness. So with this whole experience, which happened in like a whirlwind, the whole thing started by, I think April, talking with Adrian Martin, who was one of the drag kids that was in the kind of the Barbie pink outfit. Adrian was one of the people that reached out to me about it because we had just been a part of a demonstration that she had done with a group of the some of the Hood County Democrats, just some of the people that were wanting to support the queer kids that were at Granbury High School. In which case, tried to go and ended up missing it, but didn't miss her. And in that short amount of time that we got like a 5-minute reintroduction to ourselves, because it was the first time, she then gets in contact with one of the people that pitched the show, whose name's Ashley. And Ashley was looking for people that like, do you think anybody would be interested in doing this? Interesting backgrounds. And had I not run into Adrian that day, there is a chance that this wouldn't have happened. And so in continuing into the grand scheme of all of the recording, we found out in, was it interviewed in April, and then found out in early June was when they're like, so we're coming to Granbury. And it's like the excitement. And then 2 weeks later, I am then terminated from the other church, the other church that I was serving for 2 years in Granbury. And the midst of that, I go to camp and then I come back and we're starting recording. And one of the first things that we record is getting to do worship at the Gathering and getting to share that experience because, excuse me for fixing my glasses so much, they're not sitting still. One of the things that is really important to kind of name within the sequence of the drag kids that come in, those that have been dealing with all forms of hurt and being ostracized, and church hurt really is a reoccurring theme, especially amongst our black siblings who grew up black church adjacent. And so out of that, the Gathering was a space to be able to represent the wholeness of it and not necessarily like, I think for me, just not just finding a space to worship, but being a part of worship affirms so much that you're doing the work. And that's what, kind of trying to recenter in that thought. Anyway, so filming after that is back and forth between us here in Benbrook and we were living in Benbrook and we were moving. So so a couple of the scenes you can tell that we've gone from having all furniture to no furniture. So pay attention to sequence. But we were moving back. We were moving from Benbrook to Fort Worth during all of that time too. Talk about the chaos of life and the surprises of life. So all through that week, I'm going down to Granbury, doing some recording things. That's the scene where they show me getting my heels and stuff. Is also when the team came in to give me some insight as to what I'm going to do, what I'm going to be looking like. And that was that Saturday. Monday was 4th of July, and that was in Granbury. And you want to talk about an awareness of queerness, blackness, and with the queens. Anyway, we survived that. Tuesday was when we started drag rehearsal, as in my routine. So I've only had my heels since Saturday. My heels are also a size too big. You don't know that from there, but they are a size too big, and I'm practicing on carpet. I actually walk around the apartment 5 times every night, and one of those laps is walking backwards. So that is how we keep the body trying to go, because you don't know the extent of your routine. You really don't know how much you're going to be pushed or even how much you're going to be asked to repeat it. Like, I let people know I am an asthmatic. I've had asthma since 1993, and I am a large-bodied person. I've lost weight since then, but I'm still large-bodied person. And they had me moving. That Monday, I learned all of my choreography within the 2-hour span. Learned enough to then record Wednesday. So the scene that you all saw was, me going home and practicing and trying to get all of these little, all these fountains and turns and twists, and sometimes kind of walking a little bit in the heels. That was a whole nother subject. But that Wednesday, then after all the recording, we then take the heels and we go into the studio and we do a couple runs with the heels. I'm flat-footed, y'all. I'm flat-footed. There is danger. But that's Wednesday. Thursday is essentially, if you're ever in something like theater, we call like tech week. This is essentially your tech week, but it's just a day. This is where you're doing almost the majority of you're doing your whole run. It's almost all in drag without your wig, makeup, and some of the full outfit. So you have your corset, you have your heels. I had my jacket. And I'll show you all some of those things because I brought them out, because you get those. All the drag kids got, our props and stuff, which is great. But that Thursday was 3 runs of it. And I started off from corset. Corset, heels, and cape to, corset, heels. And then just the last run was just in the corset, because at that point, I couldn't breathe. And it's Friday. And Friday we still do so much. Like in the scene of them doing makeup, which it flew by, but it was 9:30 to 12:30. So 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. was where I was sitting in the chair with Layla doing my makeup. Which, like I said, Layla is a delightful conversation partner, hilarious. And also, we find it easy to just, if we don't need to talk, we don't need to talk. I just move when they tell me to move. And it's almost like kind of like a spa treatment. And that's what it was, is just kind of treating it like, okay, well, I'm not going anywhere today. So, and it was going from that to lunch to then it's like, okay, hey, we're going to do your runs now. It's like, okay, this is actual, like the night before, if you think about it, the night before. And we do, I think, 2 runs, and I do it with almost all of my drag. Was it almost all my? That's a lie and a half. It was all of my drag, because you have to do that. And if you saw how big my hair was, there's a reason you still have to practice on the day of, because none of us are professionals. Like, this is our first times in drag. Some of us first time heels. So from those 2 rehearsals, I then find out, hey, you're the closer, and I'm like, oh, great. That's more pressure. No one told me this. It makes sense, but no. And so I spent almost all of the show backstage because I was the closing number. And which it was fine for me to be able to sit and breathe and get to relax. But I did my number twice, and you don't know that from the recording, but if you were at the show, I did it twice, and another one of my drag sisters did it twice as well. I'm like, I said, of all of the bodies that you have present here that have the abilities, I have done this now 4 times today, and I have asthma, and you have asked me directly after, can you do it again? And of course, it was for Bob, so of course. And Steven, who's one of the creators of it, got my head so big with the compliments and talking about my smile that I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And that all happened in a course of 2 weeks. And then it took my back a month to recover.
I believe it.
So I got a question though. Why did you have to do it? Was just, did you have to do it twice because they wanted to get a better one? What was the reason for the second?
I honestly don't know. And it, so one of the things that I openly talk about, because also people don't know, is that the first time that I did my routine, there's a moment where I am stepping off of the stage and I have to go from the stage to a small step to the floor to turn around and then conduct the whole band. But that happens. It's a very quick turnaround. And in all of that movement and all of that going back and forth, mind you, remember, I am completely flat-footed and did not work out before any of all of this happening. So the body it got was the body it got. And that body then in that moment said, we have pain, we are tired, we need to conserve energy for just a second. And it did, and it decided to bring me down. And so I essentially squatted down because my back and my knees gave out a little bit. But because of the fact that I was aware of it, because of how heels work and shifting your center of balance and the baton I had, you do things artistically. And so you make it look like it's a part of it. And so I used my baton to help push myself up to get my legs back and stabilized, and was able to keep going. And then the next time I did it, I did the whole run and didn't buckle down. So for me, I'm like, well, possibly a chance to get that scene, but also they had me do the whole run earlier that day twice. So,
so what did you learn about DeShay in this experience? What, if anything, did you learn something about DeShay?
I did. It's been like 5 months of figuring out. Well, not even figuring out. It's just like I have been on this continuous journey that I have not been fully aware of. There's a faux awareness, and we call this masking, if you will. And I finally started to realize that over 2 decades of my life, I have masked so hard that I confused myself.
Oh, that's
and it's really hard. But when you play yourself, you play yourself. And so it finally was that moment of like, oh, wait a minute. I think I'm masking. I think my personality, a good portion of my personality has been masking. So honestly, I asked at 29, who am I? And the show has been the catalyst.
Great question.
Thank you. I don't, no one needs like a midlife crisis. You don't even need a crisis, but it's just a matter of, Dr. Camila, I told you after your dissertation defense, a bunch of things just started unlocking. It was as if like there was a hidden language in my brain, and then hearing this and having this experience, all of it finally locked together to light up and be like, so this isn't how you, it's like the way you've been is not how you want to be, and how you want to be, you have been becoming into. And you're learning to recognize that those projections upon you are not you, and you have to live into the fullness of that and not mask to please others, because getting lost in that is what has made me not understand what my full personality is.
I have a question to add on to that, since you broke it open so wonderfully. I feel like it's a blessing to hear you say that, because I feel like the journey of masking can almost be so well delusioned in your own brain that you don't even see yourself in your own life. And I think sometimes trauma, they're connecting that trauma is the way that we disassociate very easily. It's like by this age, if you've been going through it a long time, you turn it on like nobody's business. But sometimes we don't always realize that we've been groomed in performance through some of our skill set. So it may, I know I'm at your address, I'm sorry. So with that in mind, I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on whether maybe musical performance and knowing and understanding the ins and outs of music and all of that, any type of performance you've done over time as well, if some of that played a role in preparing you, but also was it something that you realized might have put you in a box as well? And this was your ability to come out of that box.
Mm, you are such an introspective person that I adore it. And this might sound dramatic, but sit with me because I have lived with a dualistic quality in my life for so long. But of course, we have lived in a society or a Western society that is heavily sitting on binaries. And you all know that I am trans non binary femme. I don't fit in that. And in not fitting in that, I have also asked in the same way of where I have tried to fit in are my, like I said, it might sound extra. Are the gifts, are the things that I have pursued, are they responses to trauma? Are they
Ooh.
responses to my desire of wanting community and belonging? So essentially, are my gifts trauma responses, or are they actual innate things that I can now rescue and rework in this understanding of now who I am becoming into being? It almost feels as if there is a relearning happening. And I'm an educator. That's my first degree is music education, and I'm a lifelong learner. And I've sat in this last month and I've been just like, wow, that something so simple as, hey, this type of structure is not working for you. Instead of just moving on, you can move on, but understand why doesn't this structure work for you and actually parsing through and sitting and understanding like your way of organizing, your way of interrogating, or your way of simply just understanding requires some more steps that you were not necessarily given in your education. Because once again, when you mask so hard that no one would believe a certain type of neurodivergency, like
Yep.
it sat with me. And Zane has been, I love my fiance. Zane is a delight in watching me process all the time. But I think I had, oh gosh, what was it? It was just the moment of those panic of like, who am I? What is this? And
Mm.
I said, I think I masked so well that while I know I am, while I know I am fine, while I know of my mental health and the things that I both struggle with, benefit, succeed, and need actual assistance, um, I also have the ability to make a therapist not think that I am an anxious person, not think that there's anything else possibly outside of like ADHD,
Oof. Oof, oof, oof.
um, that I can, and it's very important that we have psychological evaluations. We do that within our denomination. And please also recognize like a psychological evaluation asks some general things that people can be like, oh, well, I should be doing that, and can answer in such a way. And I'm also honest in the sense of like, I know how to answer something and I know how to balance out also what I do. And all of that makes a minister. Truly, there are times where we don't get to be our fullest self because in order to understand folks, we kind of step back or not step back. We open ourselves for more. And with that, I'm like, I had a therapist that said like, I think you're this, and I said, really? Like, I don't think I would have ever thought that. Um, I also don't think I'm like the Enneagram number that he gave me. I was like, I don't know if I would have agreed to that. Um, but that was what made me question it. Is that the fact of I'm a survivor of abuse, and there are some other things that I've been processing. So how well have I worked the stage from my abilities from music, from my abilities from preaching, from
Oof.
my hospitality understanding, because I am not a PK, but I'm a church baby.
Mhm.
Sang in the church choir at 4, church pianist since the age of 12, and been preaching since I was 15. I am 29. So all of those gifts or all of those abilities sometimes manifest in ways that you're like, oh, you're just really good about reading people and knowing how to respond.
Hmm.
So,
I have a question because you said that you identify as trans non-binary femme. What can you explain for those who may not know what that means?
mhm. So I say the trans portion because this is the larger part of when we say this lettering of LGBTQIAA or LGBTQIA 2S plus, and that 2S means two spirit for indigenous cultures that express this type of embodiment, gendered embodiment. Um, so out of the trans umbrella, we have then a myriad of identities, because between gender and sex, and even then sex, is a very varied category. Gender is a social construct because there is a functionality that we have ascribed to it. But humans are very much a meaning making group. And so, therefore, we also like to take over by spreading information. And therefore, if you create these types of boxes or parameters, you can also navigate and choose how power is used. Um, so there's the trans. So talking about the trans portion, that's the larger umbrella of it. The non-binary is in the sense of my identity is not in alignment in with what people say sex and gender. The sex you were born with is also, there's a gender that's ascribed to it as well, and I do not ascribe to that. And I can probably say I truly also don't like the ascribing of the sex, because there are so many conditions to our understanding of biological sex and the functionality of said thing. It is more than just XX or XY, which also is why I talk about persons that are intersex, because that is any variation on those chromosomes. The body is going to look how the body is going to look, and it is still wholly and wonderfully made. This understanding of saying non binary in our, I guess, in our gender context, allows me to shift out of these norms, that these, or not even, yeah, they're norms, they're forced norms, and allows me a chance to actually explore a little bit more, kind of like that Z axis instead of just being X and Y, seeing what's more in that. So the fem side of it is also femininity. We all possess the capabilities of femininity and masculinity. I fully believe that our divine creator instills that in all of us if we hold the divine image. Um, and how we then live into it is truly then how we live into it. So the fem portion of it is the femininity of it, which that's what I was raised around. And I don't want to solely ascribe femininity to women. And I will also say there are many women who have given me an understanding of femininity, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. The other side of femininity is understanding that it's not looking for it's not looking for functionality in the sense of like being used as how someone can commodify it. That's what I mean. There we go. So the commodification of said gender, or excuse me, yeah, how is my body going to be used or purposed? And in this sense, it's a little bit different, a little bit harder, because if you say non-binary, generally people are going to go to sex, and that's just what people are going to project onto you. But for me, it allows me to not sit in such a limiting space, and allows me to actually see a little bit further if into my trans ancestry or my transestry, because I've preached about forms of trans ancestors out of eunuchs that are representations of early intersex ancestors, trans ancestors, of gender diverse or gender, not going to say gender, I'm going to say gender diverse beings. We have existed throughout the years, and for me, understanding that, or at least being so open that that understanding came to me and allowed me to align into it allows me to also align in a type of web that other people right now are just not connecting in.
Mm.
Um, but in a sermon I heard today about, the flooding, when we talk about the Noah story and how God will not flood the earth no more with a rainbow. And I think then there's another story of flooding. And Aaron preached this word of saying that maybe the flood that is coming, it is us, because a majority of us is water. And therefore, this water is coming into this earth to water or to care for the things around it. And therefore, just by simply existing, your existence brings about care for this section, this context, this part for such a time. And so I believe that I get to have that such a time from being a trans non-binary femme and holding all of those sacred identities and intersections, even with the dangers that hold with them. I still feel this alignment is where I am finding both nourishment and the ability to nourish.
So
Reverend Camila, are there any questions in the chat? If not,
it's
I
comments,
have.
but I have a question though. I'm gonna read the comments, but I do have a question. Or you go ahead if you want to ask your question first.
Okay, so my question, DeShay, you mentioned earlier when you were talking about masking and how that has been really a coping strategy for you for much of your life. And so my question to you is, how have you or has theology been a or how have you been theologized to mask?
Oof, that's a good question too.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this type of teaching that I was introduced to within my. I'm not even going to put the denomination to it. I'm just going to say a teaching that I was brought into within my own teenage years of my own formation. And when we talk about this oneness and what oneness really actually turns into is being what is it? Not absolve. It's instead of us all coming together, instead it is this singular identity that is chosen by the powerful elite who then decide how this looks. And so then assimilate. There we go. There's assimilation that happens in there. And so if you fall out of these types of parameters, there's an actual potential danger. No, not an actual. There's danger that falls into that. That danger generally is projected as eternal damnation, but what it actually becomes is a physical and earthly hell and earthly damnation that truly creates a want of escape. So the theology that I was taught in that is that this is how you are in Christ. Your identity is Christ. There is no, we talk about male or female, Greek nor Jew. This is how it was twisted this way. And so, this is how the design is. While there is oneness in Christ, this is how oneness looks. And there is only one look. So in order to fit that, you must act a certain way. That's the only way you're going to be accepted by the community, to be then viewed enough to be steeped in prayer, steeped in devotion for Christ and for the coming kingdom. Oh God, I apologize, but that, that is the type of teaching, the type of evangelism and hellfire that was pressed upon me, that even I projected onto folks and continue to apologize to this day in. And when you know better, you do better, hopefully.
Now on this show, well, first of all, we are gonna have to come back to that experience on 4th of July, because that's a whole conversation right there. But it's the very much not being welcome situation throughout Granbury and throughout larger things. And also, you touch on the show about the hurt from church hurt period, but particularly from your experience at your last church that you were let go of, with for not being able to be your whole self, right? And so we're talking about masking, and now you get to the point where you seem to be pulling that mask off, and this is who I am. So how does the church truly and I don't like the word welcoming, because that's a, you know, but you know the idea I'm going, but how does the church support people um to be their authentic selves, however they may identify? What would that look like for you? Or what steps do you think need to happen so that we don't have the situations we have where we have so many of our kids committing suicide because they can't be themselves because of what they're being told in church? um
So hearing the rest of that question, because I was going to ask, are we talking big C church, or are we going to talk within our context? Because while both are important, because we are in Texas, in a state where we have persons trying to pass legislation where there is a no ages ban to go to drag shows whatsoever, and missing the mark entirely. But this, I would, okay, I'm going to say it. I kind of would like to get rid of this statement of all are welcome. I want to get rid of this statement of all are welcome unless it is followed by the list of things that you name as welcome and continuing to grow. That for me already is a key thing that churches should start interrogating, or really just not. I'm going to say not. Let me not use language. Let me not use that language. I think it needs to be questions, introspective work. It really is one of those things of there is a pointing of these are the persons that is so claimed hurt is being caused to, and therefore then a defense mechanism comes up of, well, these people don't come to our church, these people don't give to our church, these people defame our God.
Mm-hmm.
And the ego, because this is what happens when we feel attacked or anything like that, is we become egocentric. That's just what we do. And stepping out of that ego and stepping out into the ministry in which we've been called, because that is what we're supposed to be doing. We have a person who we have centered around this that truly stepped out of their context to be like, okay, this person needs it. And when that person, and when Jesus did not step out of his context to help somebody, they pulled him in. And the point that I want to make out of that is there is an openness. There has to be an openness and a desire to actually want to hear, to want to be present to the voices that are not there. I have, I have been confronted in my DMs where people have asked me, DeShay, where does it say in the Bible that trans is okay or something? But these persons haven't talked to me in months or years. And even then, years when we knew each other, we didn't interact in that way. Because church folks somehow believe that this relation and this uniting in Christ somehow absolves us of our abilities to talk to each other in a human manner that becomes so holier than thou. And that's my thing, is we are all humans, and that's the point of this journey, is this humanness coming together to help other humans get to be their human self and flourishing. Being able to listen to the stories of folks that are not there is another thing, because I see white persons that I'm going to be specific in this. I serve predominantly in historically white congregations where you have people that ask, how can we do more? Or what is it that white people need to be doing so that way they, are aware? And I'm like, I'm thankful that you have presented yourself within this space and getting to name that, because, when we get so excited about stuff, we got to blurt it out. And what you seek is already there. The questions you are asking, someone has already answered. Amen. And that's where when people ask me, where is something, I ask them, where is it in you? Where is it in you to be able to then try to explore it? If you ask me, where is gay in the Bible? I say, okay, then where is gay open enough in you to explore it and see it if you wanted to believe it?
That's good. Can I add to that question? Because I feel like you've said Oh, just a mouthful there. That's so good. And the responsible remembrance piece of things, also the questions that are coming to you. So I'm thinking about how sometimes people struggle, and I guess I've talked to Dr. Ari about this, like feeling like when you think differently, and of course you're on your own journey of being responsible about what you've thought, right? Like who you might have projected those thoughts onto, etc. And you have your own grieving process with what you have to correct about what you were doing. The very thing you thought was helping you is oppressing you and oppressing other people, and the way that you were seeing it. So with that in mind, what kind of maybe advice or suggestions could you say, just from your own experience, worked for you in pacing how much you will or will not explain certain parts of the journey while you are still figuring it out?
Mm. Part of that has been seminary, because seminary has given me more and more language because of the resources and access and the people that it's put in play, like people that I've been able to converse with that have opened up these parts of me. Because, like I said, there are many things that we want that are already within us. And it takes a reminder to our awareness that, hey, you already have that, like peace, like patience, like kindness, or just awesomeness. We have all of those abilities, those gifts, and seminary allowed me to run into so many folks that finally, the person that I see every day is me. I see myself every day in the mirror, and I was missing me. Somehow I wasn't a resource for my own
Mm.
deconstruction or my own healing. And that flipped when I started doing meditation actively, because I was diagnosed with ADHD this summer, and then was able to become medicated for it. That wasn't really an option for me years ago. And instead of, I could do the woe is me, or like, oh my gosh, the things I could have accomplished if I had. Well, the time that I have right now is the time that I have right now, and getting excited about the fact that, that relearning is really happening to me, that I'll sit at the piano, and I've played it for over 20 years, and then I'll go do something, and I'm like, oh, well, I've kind of known how to do this. This just makes sense now, and it it locks. um but th- being in meditation every day, and I've been in meditation every day since the middle of June, end of June.
Mm.
I sit with my feelings and these emotions, and all of the spectrum of it. When I'm feeling anxious, it's sitting with my body and being like, first it's figuring out, like, okay, what's going on, and it's to take yourself from out of your mind to the physical first, because you're always trying to find connecting points. You're finding where your feet planted at, what do you feel under there, or in the sense of getting getting comfortable and uncomfortable with your feelings, because they're yours. Thoughts are thoughts, and they're going to occur. Your feelings are yours. How they manifest or how they continue on is all dependent upon how much energy you give it. So when I sit with my feelings, I first ask, okay, what's going on in my body? And anxiety for me is a ridge of fire. It feels like, yeah, the shoulder blades, all of mine are on fire. It's heat. And that for me is anxiousness. Or if I'm feeling really excited, but it's like, am I on the border between excited and panic? It's a very much electrifying feeling. It kind of is like, it's almost as if I am aware of the atoms in my body that are bouncing off of each other. And that's what kind of panic, but also like excitement feels like. And it is sitting with that every day, making intentional time to do that, to be like, oh, that's what that is. Okay, I'm anxious. And that's it. You state it as a fact. Nothing more, nothing less. And then you actually can sit to that point. And for me, being able to interrogate some of my own past and traumas, like traumas just come out the wazoo. The shower just seems to be the perfect place where traumas just pop
Gosh, I
up.
say that all the time. Oh wow, that's crazy.
and that's the thing, is it happens. And if you have the abilities to sit with them, then do it. If you don't, one, getting a buddy is important. Two, finding a line to call or something is important. If you can find access to a therapist, that is important, whether telehealth or something. And I'm also saying this as a neurodivergent person where my executive function, that thing where if you said, I'm gonna go make a grilled cheese, you then get up from the couch and go make one. I think I'm gonna make a grilled cheese, and then 2 hours later I'm sitting on the couch because I thought, what's the best grilled cheese recipe to make? That
I love
those
that. I love
so
that.
I want to, but I want to name those types of hurdles too because
I
those are
feel
real.
seen.
But I have been thankful to have found the way my brain is working, where meditation is where I sit and I ask those hard questions and I say, oh my gosh, something that happened 25 years ago, what I didn't think was a trauma, what I thought was just something harmless, was actually a trauma put upon someone that then got projected onto me because it was taught as a good experience, and you think nothing of it, and then you finally get to a point where you're like, whoa, that wasn't okay. But it wasn't a matter of, you're like, oh my gosh, all these things and blah blah blah. No, it's, I can sit with that, and if it gets too much in a certain point, you take your Tupperware container. This is like tater tot casserole, by the way. I made that yesterday. uh, you open your Tupperware container and you take a moment to just place it inside of there, and we're gonna put that away for a moment. We'll come back to it, but we start to realize that some of the reactions that we have, the visceral reactions, the tendencies to hold grudges or even feed those emotions, stem out of some of our childhood responses to traumas, our childhood responses to survival. And when you finally figure out how to get out of survival and start moving into thriving, the world opens up in a new way. And remember that duality sake. It opens up in a new way, and you're going to continue to deal with the things that little you had to go through and had no other skills but to do. And like, you give thanks for that little you that went through stuff. You're like, you didn't deserve that. You get to see, youth doing something at a certain age, and you're like, wow, I wish I could have done that. And I remind myself that when I did it was the time that I needed to do that. And these folks are a reminder that it's just going to continue to happen more. And I give thanks for them having the strength to do that at that age.
Amen.
And it is always about a shifting perspective, and that has given me life in both the sense of me finding me and also allowing others to be them, experience me, and allowing that to stay with them. However they think about me, however they process me, is theirs. I can't hold that. I can't sit with that. And I just have to remind myself, that's how they see me. That's them, but that's not my truth and that's not my story, so I don't have to allow it to speak for me.
Can you put up a couple of the pictures? I'm gonna read these comments that were in here for you because people are out here supporting you. Because Zach
Mhm.
Smith says, first, you ladies are amazing. Well, thank you. Second, we're here is life. Hold
Yes.
on. Life changing and soul shaking. The first two seasons were full of life and hope. Can't wait to see you. So much love from Colorado. But I also want you to know that Dan Freemeyer, you know who that is.
Oh
We love
yeah.
you, DeShay.
Oh.
Your Freemeyer family is gathered with neighbors for a watch party in Charleston. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want everybody to see. Go back to the other picture because that's the real picture for me. This one here. This one here. Come on, Petty Crocker. So let's talk a little bit more about Petty Crocker. Will we see Petty Crocker again?
you know, anything is possible, and that's the point that I've Petty Crocker has really made in my life at this point, because I'm like, I can't ignore that the manifestation in which I have said these things and believed into really just, I mean, I could say that it's right there, but also that was me. Like, I lived that moment to create that moment. And I think, Kanisha, you were saying about how sometimes, I don't know if it was you or Doctor, are you talking about you don't necessarily see it as you, it's as somebody else, whatever. And that's, you know, I see that. And Petty Crocker for me is a manifestation in multiple ways, both in that physical format that I'd like to be able to get back into. Now, mind you, there's a 40-pound difference between that one and this Petty now. So I'm going to have to do some resizing, but that's okay. That's a learning process. And for me, I said that if I did drag, I really want to do justice in the fact that, for one, my drag mother is Bob the drag queen.
Right.
So if I'm going to be performing in these here parts, especially in the DFW, Texas is known for their drag queens, especially their Black queens.
That's right.
Oh. And so I want to be able to spend time in it and actually learn, for one, to do my own base makeup, just, normal makeup, and then also drag makeup, because there's an art to it. My daddy was also is a type of artist. He phenomenal at drawing, and I inherited a little bit of that. And all I have to do is, I know that if I keep practicing it, it gets better and better. It's just simply, of course, that's just how practice works.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that Petty Crocker will debut again sometime. And my sister Akila has said that all the siblings need to get together and do such a thing. And I am thankful because, with the show, we get all of that. Like, oh gosh.
What's your favorite item, DeShay? Like, tell us the one that does it for you.
Hold on.
What's your favorite?
Let me get it. So,
Yeah.
Ooh, Kate.
Yes.
Come on, Kate.
So there we go.
Oh, that's cute.
So I love the coat. Like, this is floor length.
Colors for me. Colors. And the length. Yes, the floor length is given.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And so, oh, God. Oh, of course, I don't have padding on or anything, but yes. So this whole thing, I love it.
If you had to put one word on it, how does it make you feel? Like, you said in yourself, with your labels now fitting you fully. What exuberant feeling does this give you? What would you call it?
That's liberation.
I love it.
Say more now. I'm sorry, she asked for one
give
word,
us a little description on there. You can't just drop that. Give us a description.
Sometimes I like to think about words and the positioning of them, such as liberation then has to, in order for liberation to occur or for it to be a freeing, that means that something had to oppress.
Amen.
Something had to be holding back, something had to be restricting. And that, when I tell you all about learning how to break some of those masking tendencies, learning how to break out of a mold that I wasn't in the design of, like, that's not my mold. When you feel those cracks, when you feel those moments of just kind of, it's just breaking, it's chipping away, it is the fullest feeling, the confidence of, I am this human in this very moment, out of all of the things that could happen, out of all the people in the world, out of all of the timelines, mine lined up in this very moment to do this.
Amen.
And it's like, but in enlightening all of that, it's a recognizing that what held me, or what I thought held me, only stayed there because I allowed it. I fed it. I kept it locked there. When I figured out that, I can actually I can look at it now and I can say, you don't serve me. You never did. And I can just come over and I take the key and you just unlock it and you just let it go. And it's that feeling of like part of a weight is dropped off. And then part of the weight that's dropped off then is filled with like a form of fire. And that's a passion. That's also like this energy. There's a bit of anger to it also, because you're like, this feels phenomenal. Why on earth did I have to wait so long to feel it? And then the other next step is also, this is a phenomenal feeling. Why is it that we have to feel the negative? Why does the negative have to be created to then get this positive? Why is this not the innate thing that within at least the United States that talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? That drag show was the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of...
That was the pursuit of happiness.
Like we love these things of stability. We love consistency. Like, constancy is great for us. But truly in those things, really what we're looking for is the level of care, the level of fullness, the level of just comfort, and I'd say comfort and care that those things bring us.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, when I finally figured out, I'm like, oh, I'm looking for this, but the way that I have been going about it isn't creating this. It's really, it's X does not equal this, so it can't equal Z. X doesn't equal Y, so it's not Z. But I keep trying to make Y be X, or I keep trying to make it something to be it, and it doesn't work.
When Dr. Jamie Edie said, listen, she needed that coat in her life. She said, that's what I need in my life. But I do have another question though. So you talked about how quickly this kind of happened, and you said yes when they asked you. Why did you even say yes, for one? And was there a reason or something that you thought you would get out of this show? Was this what was it a reason for the yes? I guess.
That's good.
Yes, because I asked for it, and I asked for it in the sense of my last semester at Bright Divinity, I was in a spiritual life and leadership course. And so one of the instructions for the entire semester was to take a spiritual practice to do and, work with, see how it works in your life, write about it. And at the end of the semester, kind of reflect on it. So I am a millennial who got stuck on TikTok out of the harder parts or the bigger parts of the pandemic when we did not have medications and such. And therefore, TikTok became another form of my therapy.
TikTok saved my life.
Sorry. Let me tell you. Excuse me. I'm trying to remember all these words. Oh gosh, sorry. Could you bring me back? I got a
Made
little
you say yes?
distracted.
What made you
Oh,
say
thank you.
yes?
Thank you. So saying yes, one of the manifestations one of the things that kept popping up was manifestations, and they kept coming across my page. And I'm not necessarily against that. I come out of a culture that says name it and claim it. Hello, Clark sisters. But I come, I am a fourth generation Black disciple, but I was raised ecumenically Black. So therefore, I was raised charismatic. So I know Pentecostal. I was, the Church of God in Christ is nothing new to me. And I decided that, what, I'm going to do this. Why not? What is the harm in it? And so the manifestation to practice every day was I don't chase, I attract. What is aligned for me will find me. But I think I switched it. No, it's actually, it was I don't chase, I attract. What is mine, or what is for me is for me. And I shifted it to say that, I don't chase, I attract. What is aligned for me will find me. Because truly what the energy that we put out is then come back to us. So out of that semester, I practiced it every day. I didn't do it to see if I was going to get anything. I did it because my understanding of it when I read it was, I don't chase, I attract. As a people pleaser, I have sought out the energies of other folks to give me affirmation and confirmation in my own life when, once again, all of those things reside within me. But if you put needing those in things that aren't you, you will be heavily disappointed when it doesn't give you the confirmation that you need. And so I used it as a way to try to break out of people pleasing and saying that your energy is precious. You have this, but you have, at least in this space, this one life. And what you do, or the time that you spend, you cannot get back. And so in sitting in this is the one life you have, start shifting and understanding that your energy is precious. You need to do things that you want to do. You spent teenage years doing things for people. You spent part of your 20s doing things for people. When are you going to do things for you? Because you've seen people that are in their 50s and 60s talking about, I wish I could have been myself, or I could have taken charge for myself when I was 25, 26. And I will be, if I'm going to get that far, because I already have some other intersections that make this life hard. As a trans person, the life expectancy being in the middle 30s is a sad, sad life. So, so I'm not sitting here trying to waste it anymore amongst people that wouldn't give a type of care if I was in the hospital or if anything were to happen. So I kept doing that. But as I kept saying it and practicing it and also helping to center my breath, things happened. Like I was asked to contribute a chapter in a book that got published by by the Disciples of Christ denomination. This was also during my last semester of my MDiv, which, if you didn't know this, I came in with a full tuition. I came in with full tuition and a stipend, only to then go into my spring semester and be in academic probation for an entire year because of an allergic reaction that resulted in a hospital visit and medication that led to a big downfall. And when you don't know about your own mental health, it's really hard. So from academic probation to also getting a 4. I've never gotten a 4.0, and I got a 4.0 one time in seminary, and I rejoice in that one. To getting a 4.0 to my last semester graduating, submitting my chapter to be published. Those things happened within the couple of months. Continuing on, I then was hired by the Gathering in February of this year. Like, as they continued, I think it was more things with the book came out. Oh, actually, well, yeah, more information about the book came out. There were rumors of that there was going to be a retreat in North Carolina about it. And so these ideas were popping up. But that wasn't all, folks. I kept doing it still, even out of the class. And I performed at Bass Hall here in Fort Worth, which for me, that is the equivalent of being like St. Louis Symphony at Powell Hall. Like, these are the large performance spaces that I had colleagues that I felt envious about, you know, that performed in these spaces, that did when they were teenagers, when they were in whatever 20s. And I was invited to perform here and was paid to do so. And it was a world premiere for something as well. Like, I kept speaking into these things of, if this is for me, then it is for me. I got engaged this year again, which I said again, excuse me. I was engaged beforehand, and I got engaged in Greece the first time I proposed. And this time I said, I'm not proposing and I'm not rushing. When it happens, it's going to happen. And even in one of the most stressful weeks of this year, where I was writing a 10-page, almost some type of 10-page work for the other church, I got proposed to. And that was exciting. Like, I got to experience the joy of that and lived into that. And I had a career shift. And that was an alignment for me as well. Was the pain that I had to endure, or the energies given to me, was that fair? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't believe that we have to go through a situation to explain it. And I'm here to tell you that folks will do things to you in the name of Jesus.
Yes, they will.
Or as one of the songs I have learned, they'll walk all over God's face and they'll greet you with a smile on their face.
See.
And it was enough that when I kept asking for these things of, I don't chase, I attract, and it started to be like, you've been masking for so long. You've been gaslit because you keep getting told you don't show your full self, but your full self isn't allowed here. You've been asking to whatever energy is aligned with you to be in it. This isn't with you, and therefore you had to be out of it. And when I got out of it, which was when We're Here was starting to kick up more, as We're Here was coming in, I was leaving out of there. And those energies swapped.
Oh, thank God.
And that was where we had those whole moments of being with the queens, being with the drag kids, doing drag, doing stuff that I'm like, oh God. Like, the first time I ever wore makeup was over 10 years ago. And I'm like, and then now face beat for the gods. But it doesn't stop. It didn't stop because I still practice it. I do it in my meditation. And I kept asking, and I kept saying, okay, if this is going to happen, I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep opening myself. And I got to do a retreat in North Carolina. I have been asked to preach in places where they have paid for my flight. They have paid for my food. They have paid for my lodging, and they paid for me to both preach and to do a workshop, which means that it is possible to happen again. And there are things, we didn't know that this episode was going to be the premiere. We were told it was going to be the 3rd episode.
Amen.
Things got shifted and things kept moving. And then you keep hearing these things. And y'all, I don't think, if you've ever read Vulture magazine, part of the thing, it's NYC magazine, you know, a part of those things. If you've ever read Vulture, I mean, I don't often, but there are a lot of folks that do. And my name is in there. Now that S is not
Ah,
capitalized, and people will learn that. But I am in a Vulture magazine.
I know that's
That
right.
is, and
More.
for me, that is really just, that is truly has been the power of, if you believe into these things, if you want to name how your energy is being used, if you want to actually name and claim the goodness that the divine has, or these energies that the divine has put in store in relationship for you, then believe and go out into it. I fully recognize the limitations of that. Like, I have lived paycheck to paycheck since June, and God has still provided in the things. Like, I still have things paid for. My bills are still paid for. Yes, I still get nervous every once in a while, and I sit with a meditation, and another check comes in to get something done. That's not how I want to live my life, but I can recognize the joys in it and be grateful.
Man.
But, and that's what it is. It's continuing to claim these things and recognizing that then when those things are given, you return back that energy.
Yeah. Okay, I need for you to name the book so the people know the name of the book. I think it's on our website. If it's not, it will be on there by the end of the week.
Let me see if let me grab it.
There we go. Name the book. Oh, and I wanted to say, not only were you the first episode, that's what I thought, Colors of Hope. The first episode, but your picture is on the thumbnail of the.
Yeah, okay, you want to talk about a surreal moment, y'all. Like, turning on HBO Max, and I think I actually saw it on Zane's Snapchat before I even saw it on the screen, and I'm like, that's me. That's me. That's me with Bob. Like,
That's you.
and that's the surreal moment of it. Like, but also the name of the book. Hopefully, it's inverted in this way. You can see
it's good.
It says,
yeah, sure.
Yay, Colors of Hope. Here's the full. There you go.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. Melissa did a lovely job in collecting all of the folks for that. That it is not just. I'm gonna shift it in my way of saying that it is allowing the narrative story, not even allowing, it is affirming the narrative story of queer folks that are within our denomination or within this relational aspect of faith, that have boldly proclaimed their lives in this way, and how we have been both hurt and how we are healing, how we are reclaiming, and how we are also saying, you can't do that anymore, or you can't do that anymore to me, and I refuse to let you do this to other people. Right. And what it is also is just it's not a book that is centering on just our trauma, but naming that we are folks who live into the divine, all the goodness that is in store for us, and living into our lives where we get bored. Like, some of us knit, some of us have cats and we watch documentaries with our cats. You know, some of us are in the kitchen for 3 to 5 hours because it just feels so good to be moving around and doing science and then also creating hospitality. The point of that book is the same point that we're here is showing, is that queer persons are just that. We're people, we're humans, that our story, that if you just want to strip away all the what you want to believe is bedroom antics that you apply to it, because I have never seen such a folk that are so obsessed with what happens in somebody's pants or in somebody's bedrooms.
Ooh, say it.
My God. Someone had said that, people are over here fighting about something that they have internalized, that truly, if they had just lived into, like, I think it was the Faldwell case that we see, if they could have just understood what it meant to be consensually and fearfully and wonderfully made, and understanding the joys and beauties of intimacy, that you wouldn't have had to create harm and destruction in a young person's life who is just starting, and now you're using as a scapegoat. Like, the ability to see people as who they are. And let's face it, when we see people, we will project our context. That's just how we do. It's just like reading into the Bible. I think it was a term that people used, was called eisegesis, was reading our context into the Bible. And then I kept going further, and I'm like, I might want to challenge that and saying that we all do that regardless. As much as we are faithful to the text, we are still reading it in a way. We're reading a context through somebody else's context as well. Like there are so many contextual lenses that are already at play that shift once we get to the text. And the point of it is that there's a story, and there's a story being told, and simply that everybody has a story and should have the ability to tell their story without it negating anybody else's.
That's good.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing, and
Reverend
thank you for
Camilla, can
your
I
yes.
ask one thing? Just one last
Of
thing.
course you
One
can.
very last
Go
thing.
right ahead.
You can give us 3 more minutes. I'm only asking because it's like on the tip of my tongue. You've set it up for the whole hour. And I'm like, I will be that person at home that's like, okay, I need this question answered. So if someone was in a space where now they are seeing themselves fully, right? They have maybe
Good.
had the enlightenment. They get it now, which that's a triggering term, so we don't even have to really say that. But light bulbs are going off, right? They're now feeling like they're in their, as the kids would say, their proverbial bag with who they are. They get it now. But the people don't get it around them, right? They sometimes can wake up and feel the temptation to be pulled back into who you pretended to be for X amount of years or what have you. What advice would you give someone who might be holding on to the thought of, oh, well, I was this person for X, Y, or Z years, and I just don't know if I can really keep doing this. Like, keep living into the truth of who I am and keep leaning forward when people are pushing against me. Like, what advice would you give someone trying to navigate that journey and lean more fully into it?
First of all, one, you were such a millennial with me because I text Dr. Irie on Monday saying that I secured the bag. So thank you for the bag comment.
You're welcome. Oh, TikTok's
But
coming later. Don't worry. Now that I know you're on TikTok.
Oh, Lord.
um, so truly, for one, is a reminder that out of all the things that you have control in life, you really only have control over yourself.
Mm.
And continuing to solidify that understanding, and that is in ways of self-acceptance, that's continuing to understand how happiness is, and also a lack of holding connection, as in where something has the ultimate power over you, and that's over things we enjoy too. When we learn how to continue to strengthen those things after all these light bulbs are going off, because it's like, what do I do? It's one, you've got continue to be you, because that is what's opening things up. But two, it's recognizing that you are the only one whose validation is absolutely important. And I say that with a grain of salt, in knowing how resources are manipulated and are withheld given a person's embodiment. So I am fully aware of that one. And you are the only person that can build yourself confidence. You're the only person that can build yourself awareness. You're the only person that can create compassion that is both effective for you and others. Because when you practice good empathy and compassion to others, you also do it for yourself. And that just continues to be a cycle that feeds everybody around you. When you start to realize, for me, when I started to feel all these things about myself coming out of here, I recognized that they were also things that were going to push me back in the eyes of persons that might have held me in such esteem. And guess what? That's still not my responsibility to hold. I hold me, and that's who I get to hold at the end of the day. That's whose thoughts I deal with at the end of the day. And when I continue to allow another person to have that power, I don't get to fully be me. And I recognize the use of masking. I recognize it as the safety precaution that it is, because if certain people did not mask, we probably have a higher amount of trans women, black trans women that would be killed. I guarantee that. And here's where we are at too, where we have to be able to name that it has been masking that has kept people safe, instead of them getting to actually just be themselves, and people recognizing this is a person, and therefore let them person if they are not harming themselves or anybody else. And that's really hard for people because control is real. Control is heavily, heavily real in our society, in this world that has been taken by white supremacy, that has been taken over by whiteness, or patriarchy, has been taken over by isms that choose to separate us, that keep us from these altars of connection. These isms have existed for years and continue to exist. And they only start to shift, or they can only be both eradicated, when awareness by the individual is made. You can't change anybody. And I mean that as in, at the end of the day, someone makes a decision to change. You can tell them facts from A to Z, and guess what? If they don't believe it, they don't believe it. And you will continue to be purple, blue, green, whatever in the face. And guess what that does to you? That just harms you. That just brings up that just feeds into the emotions that you are trying to sit with. And so that's where it is. It's truly, when you are discovering these things and they're all new, sit with yourself. Sit with the person that you are going to be with your entire life, because they're going to tell you things. There are things that are going to speak, that are come out of you, that you're like, I've had this body for years and it's never said that until I listened to it. Oof. It's time for us to listen to ourselves, and it's time for us to realize that we have more potential, we have more power, and we have more of the divine in us than we want to give, and others have taken it so much that we don't think we have enough. But there is more than enough.
That's good. That was good.
That was it.
I'll make sure they mute that. So thank you so much. There are more comments that you can go back and read. People are, of course, but I do want to thank you for your yes to We're Here, for inviting your gathering family, for being along with you on this journey, and for being who you are and the way you are in all its beauty. Is there anything you want to say before we want you to have the last word?
I want to name this because it's very important to me, is that when we discuss these stories of, my context is Black queerness, there's a focus on trauma. And in focusing on trauma, the journey of healing is missed, and the gathering is a part of that. And I want the gathering to hear that from me, because while I said it multiple times in the recording, it did not come up. So I need the gathering to understand that your placement and the way that we do ministry, the way that we understand the divine and womanism, and how it is an effective way of shaping and giving our community life, that is the important part on the side of trauma. The story is about moving from trauma into healing, and that is truly what the gathering was and continues to be. And so while that didn't get to be fully said, I want you all to hear that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this Talk Back to the Text Point 2. We will see you on Saturday. We are virtual this week. Dr. Ivy will be preaching, and I'm just going to say this one time. I have to do announcements because, I have to try to say it several times so the people catch it. We are in person the 2nd and the 3rd Saturday of December, not on the 4th Saturday. 2nd and 3rd Saturday, we are in person. We hope you can join us, but we would love to see y'all in the virtual church on Saturday. So thank you all. Y'all have a good night and